What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Fantasy Addiction Network. In this video, we are going to be doing a live mock draft. We're going to do it from the 2 slot today, and we'll be doing quite a few of these, going through all the various slots just to make sure that we hit on a lot of the different draft strategy this year and really just discuss, what we're looking at. We're also working on some draft strategy videos that will be dropping later this week as well, so keep an eye out for that also. But without further ado, let's get this thing started, and we'll go through and kind of talk through what you're going to do from the 2 slot. Now, the 2 slot specifically is actually pretty difficult this year. I like getting these earlier draft slots because it's nice to be able to get a Saquon Barkley, which of course that's going to be the pick here. If you're not going to get Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley is the best bet to actually hit number 1 overall in fantasy. But what gets really tricky in these earlier slots, the 1, 2, 3 slots, is we're trying to lock down 2 running backs early. That's the strategy that we're really trying to hit on this year. But it gets really tricky because, as you see, and this is a perfect example of it, when you're early on, you lose the ability to get one of those upper echelon guys like an Aaron Jones, a Nick Chubb, and Austin Eckler, Kenyon Drake that typically go in the second round. They're all gone by the time they get here. So you're kind of left with this weird quandary of players that you don't want to draft in this particular spot. We have, I don't really care for many of the third round running backs. The only guy that I'm even remotely interested in the third round is Jonathan Taylor. James Conner is a complete injury-prone guy. Le'Veon Bell is already getting talked about having his workload reduced. We've got Chris Carson, who is recovering from a hip injury. Todd Gurley, who has a limp and has had arthritic knees for a while. David Johnson has not finished the season in a while and has been highly inefficient with his touches. Leonard Fournette playing on arguably the worst team in the league and is also pretty inefficient. And then now you got Melvin Gordon dealing with the injury. So I despise all of the second, third round running backs, guys that even go into like the 4th round. So ultimately, that's the hardest part about getting this earlier draft slot. So then you get into the receivers, which I like Chris Godwin. I like Kenny Golladay, Allen Robinson, love DJ Moore. But I don't really see there being like a massive gap in the talent of these guys versus some of the other receivers that you can get later. So when I'm picking this early, I'm almost forced into looking at potentially taking a tight end. Other than that, I would probably take 2 wide receivers unless you really believe in Jonathan Taylor. I like Jonathan Taylor a lot, but I think it's going to take him a few weeks before he's actually really relevant. So what we're going to try here is we're going to go with our taking George Kittle strategy. George Kittle is our number 1 tight end on the year, and then we're going to loop back around and you can pick your favorite receiver here. My favorite of this group is DJ Moore, so we're going to take him, but you could go Odell Beckham or Adam Thielen or Mike Evans, whoever you guys like the best. And again, check out our rankings, link in the description box for how we have all of those receivers ranked. But as you can see, when you go that second slot, you're really going to have to kind of punt the running back position because you have such a strong upside in the first pick overall of taking a guy like Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, or Zeke Elliott. You're really losing it on the back end because there's just nobody in that 3rd, 4th round of guys that I really care for. Now, when we come back here, it gets a little more interesting. There's still a good number of receivers that we're happy with, and there are a couple running backs that I'm a little bit more interested in the 4th round. We want to make sure we at least nab one of these guys. DeAndre Swift is one of my guys this year. I think he's going to have a pretty sizable workload with Kerryon Johnson dealing with, he's always been dealing with injuries ever since he came into the pros. He already has a knee brace on, and DeAndre Swift has been killing in camp. So we'll take DeAndre Swift. And also we'll jump over and take a wide receiver here. Now, I like DJ Chark. I like Tyler Lockett. Those are the 2 guys I'm looking at here. We'll go with Tyler Lockett just to stick with the my guys, since he was one of our my guys, and keep going from here. So thus far, I'm still liking the way this looks. I don't like taking a tight end early, but if you're going to do it, if you can get George Kittle in the back of the 2nd round, I think it's definitely a worthwhile strategy because you get guys like Saquon Barkley or Christian McCaffrey right away. Being able to pair 2 guys that are most likely going to finish in the top tier at their position is really helpful, and then you can still load up on receivers in these later rounds. So coming back here into the late 6th, we are now looking at potentially, so in terms of the running backs on the board, you're getting a lot of timeshare backs. J.K. Dobbins, who I really like from a talent perspective, but I don't really see him taking over for Mark Ingram, at least early on in the season. Lots of backup running backs or guys like Marlon Mack who are going to have their job taken away. Matt Breida, Jordan Howard is kind of a murky situation. I'm not completely avoiding it, but it doesn't really excite me here. So this is where it gets really tricky. Probably going to just keep going after a receiver here. Quarterback is also an option, and considering that Dak Prescott fell this far, this is something we're going to get into in our quarterback strategy video. Dak Prescott is the only quarterback in this tier that I'm willing to reach for. And in this case, it's not even a reach. He's actually going pretty late. So I'm going to take Dak Prescott here, and then I'm going to stack him with his second receiver, who arguably is better than Amari Cooper. I'm going to take Michael Gallup. So now we have the Cowboys stack there. I'm really liking the way this is turning out. So even though the running backs aren't going to be as strong outside of Saquon Barkley, we still got a pretty strong core of receivers with DJ Moore, Tyler Lockett, and Michael Gallup, and we have George Kittle. So at this point, I think Dak Prescott is going to finish in the top 3 at his position. I think Saquon Barkley will do the same, and George Kittle will do the same. So we've locked down 3 guys that have the potential to finish in the upper tier of their respective positions. So now is where we have to start filling out the rest of our roster. As I said, or I actually don't think I mentioned at the start, we're doing this as a 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, tight end, and 2 flex. I know a lot of people play 1 flex, but I just kind of wanted to throw that extra nuance in there for those of you that play in a little bit deeper leagues, because we're still at the spot where we're having to draft players that you need to start. So at this point, I'm still pretty grossed out by the running backs. I like what we're hearing out of Zach Moss. Chase Edmonds is getting a lot of hype as well. Not really interested in Philip Lindsay or Kerryon Johnson here, especially with already having DeAndre Swift. There's some running backs later, so I'm probably going to take Zach Moss here, and then we'll flip back around and take... don't necessarily want to take 2 Lions, but Marvin Jones is an incredible value. Jamison Crowder is another guy here. It's kind of a gross pick, but he's going to get a lot of volume. And sometimes all you need in these later rounds is someone that's going to give you a decent bit of upside. And while Jamison Crowder is not really that explosive, looking at the other guys around him, the only other guy I would take would be Marvin Jones. Let's take Marvin Jones. I think it's okay to take 2 guys from Detroit. Detroit should have a pretty decent offense this year. And we'll go with that. So now we have 4 wide receivers and 3 running backs. Since we took a tight end early, we're not really looking at many more tight ends at this spot, which is nice because then you can look at some of the other positions here. And specifically, I think we're going to try to double up on running backs here now that we have a pretty strong core of receivers between Gallup, Lockett, Moore, and Marvin Jones. We can grab a couple guys later. Damian Harris is a guy that I've been looking at more and more recently. He's been killing in camp. Sony Michel may not even be ready to start the season. And then we've got, Rex Burkhead still there. But overall, I think Damian Harris is going to he could end up with the starting role there behind Cam Newton. I think Damian Harris will actually have a pretty good year. So we'll take Damian Harris, and then we'll come back around. And I really like Duke Johnson a lot this year. The price is cheap enough that if he doesn't end up turning out, that you can drop him on the waiver wire. But I'm not a big fan of David Johnson by any means. I think Duke Johnson is far more efficient and a better runner at this point in his career. And if David Johnson gets hurt, Duke Johnson runs into a very good role for his skill set. And I'm going to take the upside with a guy like Duke Johnson here. So now we're starting to fill out the back half of our draft with high upside running backs. And that's typically the strategy that I always want to employ, even if you're doing like a robust running back draft. There's nothing that says you still can't take the high upside running backs near the end of your draft. Those are the kind of guys that completely swing your league. If you drafted Alvin Kamara in his rookie season or Nick Chubb, those are the guys that by the end of the season you're incredibly excited about having on your team. So already have George Kittle. I'm tempted to take another tight end that could potentially break out, but I don't think we really need to. At this point, we're still more focused on just grabbing potential running back and wide receiver breakouts. I like Anthony McFarland a lot, but there's a lot of hype about, Benny Snell getting the majority of the workload if James Conner is to go down. So we'll take Jerick McKinnon, who's potentially going to be seeing that third down running back role there in San Francisco, and could honestly get a lot of targets this year. Neither Tevin Coleman or Raheem Mostert are really that great in the passing game, and I think Jerick McKinnon could easily take that role. And then we'll take a receiver that we're very high on right now, had been all offseason, and he's starting to really get the hype, which I think will cause his ADP to go up. But we'll take Paris Campbell here. So now we have 5 receivers in DJ Moore, Tyler Lockett, Michael Gallup, Marvin Jones, and Paris Campbell. And we also have a good core of potential breakout running backs here in Damian Harris, Duke Johnson, and Jerick McKinnon. With this last pick, because we grabbed Dak Prescott, don't really need a second quarterback. We'll just stream one off the waiver wire later. There's not really any tight ends here that I really feel the need to take either. George Kittle has a late enough bye week that I'll just stream the position later. So in terms of guys here, we mentioned Benny Snell already. That's a decent option because I do think that James Conner is a high risk of getting re-injured. And there's really not any other upside receivers here at this point that make it even worth taking. So we'll take Benny Snell, and we'll round out our draft with taking more running backs and receivers, which is typically what I like to do, especially if we do like what we did here, where we were taking Saquon Barkley at the top. You want to grab a lot of running backs at the end. So let's recap this. So we have Dak Prescott stacked with Michael Gallup, but we got Dak Prescott, Saquon Barkley, DeAndre Swift, DJ Moore, Tyler Lockett, George Kittle, Michael Gallup, and Zach Moss. And then our bench, we have Marvin Jones, Damian Harris, Duke Johnson, Jerick McKinnon, Paris Campbell, and Benny Snell. So that's the kind of team that I would be looking at drafting if I was in the 2 slot. We'll do some more of these going throughout the rounds and just giving you guys different takes on what we're doing there. But based on our rankings, based on the players that we're high on, that is a kind of draft that I would be pretty satisfied with. So short video today, but thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.